Have you ever wondered what those mysterious trails are being left behind by planes? Poison? Mind control? Reflective particles? Me neither. But many have, and many think that they are using these trails to change America for the worst. Chemtrails. Ever heard of them? That is the name given to these evil trails of vapor that are, allegedly, poisoning the population. Is the world ending? Are we already infected, effectively leading to an inevitable zombie apocalypse that will end in the entire human race going extinct, all because of the government's lack of care for us patriotic Americans? Find out on Lies in the Skies, today's episode of the Tasteful podcast, where I speak on this theory and try to prove to you once and for all that chemtrails are a dumb theory and those who believe in it need help. This morning at 11 a.m., the Tasteful podcast. They are putting dangerous chemicals into the air. They are brainwashing the public. They are trying to control the population. This and much more is what people are theorizing about what contrails, the trails of vapor left behind by aircrafts flying at high altitudes, could be doing to our population. Could this really be happening? Could the government really be secretly poisoning the general public completely at random without our knowledge? I'm here to attempt to answer these questions that keep me up at night, so maybe I can save you from another sleepless night. You are watching the Tasteful podcast, and in today's episode, Lies in the Skies, I will discuss many theories about chemtrails and have a special guest interview, but more on that a little bit later. The idea of chemtrails is said to originate from an event during the Cold War in which the British government performed more than 750 mock chemical warfare trials on the general public. The people affected, being in the hundreds of thousands by this trial, were subject to zinc-cadmium sulfide. At the time, scientists thought it to not actually be harmful, only choosing it for its easy ability to keep track of, but it was later discovered that repeated exposure to zinc-cadmium sulfide could lead to cancer. This wasn't the only time this happened, though, as the US did basically the same thing in the 50s and 60s. You can find more information about this at cnn.com/chemtrails conspiracy theory explained. Many of the theories about chemtrails are centered around a they. Whether it is the government, rich elites, or powerful cult, theorists blame a vague group for the phenomena regardless of real evidence. I think another thing that's important to talk about is confirmation bias. People often ignore concrete evidence that doesn't go along with what they believe, while hailing any piece of evidence that supports them as the absolute truth. These kinds of people often join online groups and forums supporting the idea of chemtrails, which leads to a feedback loop constantly being fed information that supports you while never having your ideas challenged. A majority of these people just never see the other side of the argument. Additionally, in a poll hosted by Ziha Zhao, Koei Cheshire, and Amy Bruckman, we found that more believers used Facebook as a source of information than any other social media. You can find this poll along with more information on sense-making and the chemtrail conspiracy theory on the internet, insights from believers and ex-believers on acm.org. Facebook, as well as other social media, have a problem in its algorithms where you're only fed what you consume, even if you don't realize it, which is the cause of that negative feedback loop that leads people to never have their beliefs questioned. This leads perfectly into my next point, which is that the reason many people choose to follow the chemtrail theory is because they want there to be a reason behind things that have happened in their own life. This is what Mr. Dustin Tingley, a political scientist and Harvard professor, had to say when asked why he thinks a significant number of people continue to believe this theory despite lack of substantial supporting evidence. People often want something to blame for anything that happens to them that they believe to be out of their control. For example, I have seen people blame their children's autism or other birth defects on chemtrails or general dangerous chemical exposure. Although it may seem plausible at first, around 90% of autism comes from genetic factors determined at birth, rather than outside factors. While the other 10% could be from chemical exposure, there is no substantial evidence to support this. Another thing that comes up when talking about chemtrails is the why. Why would anyone be putting chemicals like this into the atmosphere in secret? While the theory behind the purpose of chemtrails differs from person to person, one thing that persists is that whatever it is affecting the population negatively. Mr. Dustin Tingley brings up another important point when prompted with the question, in your opinion, is the idea that harmful chemicals are being secretly released into the atmosphere via airplanes plausible? He stated that for such an operation to exist, many people would have to know about it, and that the temptation to release that information to the public to gain fame and popularity would be too strong. In a BBC article written by Mike Wendling, we learned that lawmakers in Tennessee actually banned the use of airborne chemicals. This led many believers to point to chemtrails as the reason the bill was passed. This, however, is likely not the reason, because the bill broadly stated that affecting temperature, weather, and sunlight is what was banned, so those of you who are being brainwashed by these trails are still not in the safe. While the chemtrail theory may seem outlandish to many, geoengineering is not. Geoengineering is a controversial topic that consists of the idea that we can reflect a small amount of sunlight back into space to cool the planet and slow global warming. The reason this is attached to chemtrails is because of the way it is suggested we go about it. The main method to do such a thing is by ejecting small reflective particles into the atmosphere to reflect a small amount of sunlight away from Earth. Modifying the Earth's atmosphere has long been something scientists just don't do, like how scientists aren't modifying or cloning humans despite possibly having the technology to do so. The difference with geoengineering is that some scientists are starting to change their minds on this idea. As the Earth warms, we are given more of an incentive to try and modify the atmosphere. Geoengineering is so controversial because of the possible side effects and implications that come with conducting such an experiment. For example, what if geoengineering led to extreme changes in weather and damage to the ozone layer of our atmosphere? There's also the idea that powerful people could take advantage of this for their own gain and use it without proper knowledge of the consequences, possibly causing devastating results. Some chemtrail theorists think these contrails they see in the sky are actually the first steps towards geoengineering, that scientists have secretly already begun. This isn't a small thing either, as 60% of discourse surrounding geoengineering is purely conspiratorial. A representative poll in the US even states that around 10% of Americans believe this conspiracy to be true, while 20 to 30% believe it to be somewhat true, as stated in an article written by Gernot Wagner, an American climate economist whom I reached out to. You can find more in his article at gwagner.com/chemtrails. As you can see, while chemtrail theories continue to run rampant, saying absurd things like the government is poisoning us to keep us from overpopulating, there are still reasonable people like you, me, and the journalists I interviewed. That is to say, even though there is so much happening in the world right now, and it may seem like the world could end any day now, just know that you will still wake up tomorrow, and the world will still be the same as yesterday, and you will never be as dumb as those who believe in chemtrails. Stay safe, do your own research, and that was the Tasteful Tangent Podcast. ATC out.